The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 4, Dragon and Herdsman. Chapter 10. Dracos was waiting for him another 100 yards ahead, hidden behind a particularly large tree. "You all right?" Jack asked anxiously as he stretched his hand behind the tree, glancing back first to make sure Allison wasn't watching.
"I am fine,"
the dragon assured him. He touched a paw to Jack's hand and vanished up his sleeve.
"4 of the enemy have been neutralized, at least temporarily."
"Great. Tell me about it." He listened as the dragon gave him a quick summary, the gold-scaled head draped as usual across Jack's right shoulder. "Good job," he said when the other had finished. "Hamstringing those first two was especially smart. It'll take a week of regrowth treatment before they can do anything but hobble."
"Thank you,"
Dracos said.
"Unfortunately, I will probably not be able to use such a trick a second time."
"That's okay," Jack assured him. "Now they'll have to keep an eye on what's going on above them, around them, and below them. That's bound to slow them down a little, and every bit helps."
"Agreed,"
Dracos said.
"Has the first Kada switch taken place yet?"
Jack nodded. "About 10 minutes ago."
"How did Allison react?"
Jack glanced back again. "Actually, I don't think she noticed."
"How could she not?"
Dracos countered.
"She is right in back where she can see everything."
"I know, but everyone was very cool about it," Jack told him. "The next batch of Kada just sort of drifted over to their chosen Arasvas. Then they went up one sleeve while the old hat batch came out the other. Very slick. I'd told Hren to keep it secret, but I hadn't really thought he and the others could pull it off." Dracos was silent a moment.
"We can hope they will continue to be as capable,"
he said, sounding doubtful.
"Still, now that I'm here, we can take rear guard while Allison leads. That way she will be facing away from the Kada for the next transfer."
"And if she'll let me," Jack warned. "Don't forget, she's the one with the gun."
"You do not need a gun,"
Dracos pointed out.
"You have me."
"I know that, but Allison doesn't," Jack reminded him.
"You will find a way to convince her,"
Dracos said.
"I have confidence in you."
"Thanks," Jack said. "Any ideas on what we do when it's Greenie's turn, by the way?"
"Greenie?"
"Our leader of the pack," Jack said, nodding at the green Kada padding along beside him. "Allison's bound to miss him, especially if she's the one leading him at the time."
"That would certainly make her wonder,"
Dracos agreed, with the first touch of humor Jack had heard from him since they'd arrived on this world.
"We will have to call a rest break when that time comes."
"I suppose that'll work," Jack said. "Any chance you can give me some warning before he needs a host?"
"I can do that,"
Dracos assured him.
"Tell me, did Tanim return safely?"
Jack frowned. "Who?"
"I mean, the gray-scaled Kada."
"Oh, him," Jack said, looking around.
"Her,"
Dracos corrected.
"She is a female."
"Ah," Jack said. He'd wondered earlier whether there were any females among the group. "Yeah, there she is, over to the left." He half turned his torso so that Dracos could see her through the opening in his shirt. "Looks okay to me."
"Good,"
Dracos said.
"She followed me and I had to send her back."
"Did she give you trouble?"
"I doubt any of these beings are capable of giving genuine trouble to anyone,"
Dracos said scornfully.
"I was merely concerned that she had returned safely."
"Ah," Jack said, nodding. "You called her Tanim?" There was a short silence, and he had the odd impression that Dracos was actually embarrassed.
"She looks very like someone I once knew,"
the dragon said at last, reluctantly.
"I apologize for the confusion."
No, that's all right, Jack assured him. We can call her Tanim if you want to,
I do not want to.
the dragon growled.
My Tanim was nothing like this. I do not wish her name associated with these creatures.
Okay, fine, Jack said hastily. I'm sorry I even brought it up. He felt the dragon move restlessly against his skin.
I am sorry in turn,
Draco said more quietly.
I will try not to. Just a moment.
What? Jack asked, coming to an abrupt stop. He knew that tone, and it usually meant trouble.
Something ahead,
Draco said. His tongue flicked out through Jack's shirt as he tasted the air.
Animals, many of them.
A herd of something? Jack asked hopefully.
Or a pack of something,
Draco said grimly.
There is no way to tell whether or not they are predators without seeing them.
Jack looked over his shoulder. He could see Allison through the trees, but her attention was on something off to her right. Clear, he told Dracos, putting his hand around the side of the nearest tree. Go! Draco shot out of his sleeve, his claws catching the tree trunk with a solid grip as he passed. Scampering up the trunk like a giant golden squirrel, he vanished in the foliage above. Jack, Allison called, you'd better come see this. Coming, Jack said. Giving Greenie a pat on the flank, he headed back. He found her staring up into one of the larger trees. What do you think? She asked, gesturing. Jack followed her pointing finger. 8 feet up the trunk was a spot about 1.5 feet across where the bark had been almost completely torn off. Looks like something was trying to carve its initials in the tree, he said. And kept making mistakes and having to erase, Allison agreed. You can see claw marks there at the edge. Jack nodded. They looked very similar, in fact, to the marks made by Kadah claws, except that these scratch marks were much further apart, which meant this animal had much larger paws, and they were 8 feet off the ground. I don't think we want to run into this guy, he said. Allison snorted. I don't think I've even want to see him in a zoo, she said darkly. I don't know if he'd bother a puka, let alone a whole group of them, but the Erasfas would be like dumplings on the hoof for something this size. Assuming he's a carnivore. It would be criminally stupid to assume anything else at the moment, Allison said. Any thoughts? Jack chewed his lip. Seems to me our best bet would be to group all the Erasfas together in the middle where we can protect them. We, Allison said pointedly. Fine, where you can protect them, Jack said. Whatever. Then we let the pukas roam around the outside while you and I steer near the Erasfas. That's pretty much what I was thinking, she agreed. Unless, of course, you're ready to give up on this caravan and send them back home. Not with those mercs still on our tail, Jack said firmly. They'd slaughter the whole bunch of them. Why? She demanded. That's the part I don't get. Why would the Malison ring waste perfectly good ammunition on any of them? Jack sighed. I already said I can't explain. Trust me, we have to stick together. Allison sighed. Fine, she said in resignation. In that case, we'd better start looking for a good place to turn west. We're going to need those foothill caves more than ever now. In fact, we're going to need a whole apartment complex worth of them. We're not going to the hills, Jack said. I've been thinking, and I'm not sure anymore that the SNA was destroyed, like Frost thinks. I'm thinking maybe it just hid in the water and is making its way down toward us. Really? Allison said, her dark eyes probing his face. You have any evidence for this, other than wishful thinking? Not really, Jack had to admit, but the computer is pretty resourceful. The computer, Allison said pointedly. Or your uncle, Jack frowned. What are you talking about? Don't play cute, she growled. I heard that other voice just before the last explosion. It didn't sound like any PS computer system I've ever seen. Where was he hiding, anyway? Jack suppressed a grimace. He'd been hoping she hadn't caught Uncle Verge's change in tone there at the end. I'm sorry. I really can't talk about that. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. You know, Jack, it can be fun to have secrets, she said. But sometimes those secrets can turn around and bite you in the butt. Don't treat me like a child, Jack snapped. I can't talk about it, period. Her lips tightened briefly. Fine, she said. Have it your way. I just hope you'll find it in your heart to loosen up a little before something I don't know kills me. So you want to tell Haren about our new marching order, or should I do it? I'll tell him, Jack said. He nodded at the claw marks. And given that, I think that if I'm on point, I should carry the Corvine. You ever fired one before? Jack gave her a lopsided grin. I had 10 whole days of training back at the Wynyard's Edge, remember? That's what I thought, Allison said. Tell you what, I'll keep the Corvine, and I'll take point. Whatever, Jack said, trying to keep the satisfaction out of his voice. Perfect. You corral Greenie, and I'll go find Hren. They'd been traveling in their new formation for nearly an hour when Dracos finally reappeared, slipping into sight through the undergrowth. About time, Jack said as the dragon put a paw on his outstretched palm and vanished up his sleeve. Any problems?
None,
Dracos said.
The animals I smelled were plant eaters, though with quite formidable looking horns. I was able to drive them on their way with little difficulty.
And this took you a whole hour?
No, of course not,
Dracos said.
I scouted ahead for other potential threats, then circled back to see if I could learn what the mercenaries were doing.
And? Jack felt a whisper of movement across the back of his right leg as the dragon twitched his tail.
I found no signs of pursuit,
the other said.
Either they are still pondering their next move, or else they have already decided on a different tactic.
Probably the latter, Jack said. I just hope it doesn't involve bringing the capstan over the forest and strafing randomly until they hit something.
They wish to capture you alive,
Dracos reminded him. They want Uncle Virgil alive, Jack countered. I'm not so sure how badly they want me by myself.
We shall see,
Dracos said.
At least the heavy foliage will prevent them from using the transport infrared detectors to easily locate you. And of course, they still do not know how the Kada appear on such detectors.
Don't be so sure, Jack warned. Remember, Frost and Neverland are working with the Valaga. If I were Neverland, as soon as I knew a Kada had survived, I'd have screamed for all the data they've got on your people, including how you show up on IR detectors.
That data would not do them any good,
Draco said.
Valagan sensors work differently from yours.
Maybe, Jack said. But don't forget that the Malison Ring has 4 of the Valaga's nasty little death weapons when they attacked your advance party. If the Valaga were willing to hand those over, I don't think they'd be too hard to talk out of a couple of sets of sensors, too.
Perhaps,
Dracos conceded reluctantly.
Odd. The Valaga have always been very protective of their technology. But you're right. The Malison Ring certainly did have death weapons.
Which we'd better hope are a long way from here, Jack said as the thought suddenly struck him. They could just sweep it across the forest and be done with it.
It does not work that way,
Dracos said.
Even in the vacuum of space, the death is a fairly short-range weapon. On a planet's surface, its range is much less.
How much less?
Considerably,
Dracos said.
In a forest like this, with life all around, no more than 2 or 3 feet.
Thank heaven for small favors, Jack said.
Yes,
Dracos said.
Were there any problems while I was gone?
Jack shrugged. Allison's mad at me for keeping secrets, and there's something out here that likes to rip off tree bark 8 feet off the ground. Aside from that, not much.
Yes, I saw similar claw marks up ahead,
Dracos said.
But they appeared to be several days old. Perhaps the creature has moved on.
I hope so, Jack said. Because if he hasn't, we're probably going to lose a puka or 2 down the rabbit hole.
Meaning?
Meaning that with the Arasfast together in the center this way, the pukas have a bad habit of ranging away from the main group, Jack told him. Far enough out, in fact, that they blast. He pointed to the left, where a pale burgundy Kada was walking briskly away. Come on, let me show you how my day's been going. The maverick Kada had worked his way around a stand of bushes by the time Jack reached him. Completely out of sight of the main group, digging industriously at a small insect mound, he would probably never have noticed if he'd been left behind. Come on, Jack said, getting a grip on his crest and tugging on it. Come on, big fella. Reluctantly, the Kada allowed himself to be pulled away from his snack. Jack eased him around the bushes and started working his way back toward the edge of the group. And it hasn't stopped either, he continued to Dracos. No matter what the Malison Ring has in mind, once it gets dark, we absolutely have to quit for the day. If we don't, we'll probably lose half of them by morning.
Perhaps I can help,
Dracos offered.
I can patrol the outer edge of the group and watch for stragglers.
Kind of like a sheepdog?
Not precisely the way I would have phrased it,
Dracos said stiffly.
But essentially correct.
What if Allison sees you?
What if she does?
Dracos countered.
What would one more Kada be among so many others?
I don't know, Jack said doubtfully. She's pretty sharp, and there aren't any other gold ones. But you're right, I can't keep them all together myself. Let's give it a shot. Dracos bounded from Jack's collar onto the ground.
You returned this one to the herd, then cross over to the right flank,
he instructed.
I will stay on this flank and also keep watch to the rear.
Or you'll be handy if the Malison Ring makes another move?
Not if,
Dracos corrected him grimly.
When?